Welcome to today's conversations where we unpack one of the most consequential legal reforms currently before Parliament, the UPDF Amendment Bill 2025. Framed as a restructuring of military courts to align with the Constitution, the bill also raises deep questions about civilian rights, legal clarity, and the balance between security and liberty. As the military's powers expand to include civilians under loosely defined circumstances, what does this mean for justice, accountability, and constitutionalism? Today, to discuss this very paramount question and topic, I have an illustrious panel with me, whom I shall introduce from my extreme left coming in. At my extreme left is Miss Nancy Ayot. Nancy is a feminist lawyer and a writer. Good afternoon and welcome to the show, Nancy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, viewers. Welcome to this week's show.
Yes, it is extremely lovely to have you here, as usual.
As usual.
And right next to me is our next panelist, Miss Theresa Tumwesigye. Theresa is a lawyer and a communications expert. Good afternoon and welcome to the show, Theresa.
I'm so excited. Can you see it?
We can see it,
You
Theresa.
can see it.
Yes, we're very excited to have your input. It will bring a certain balance to this conversation.
This is the day the Lord has made. And we are here.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
Certainly is. I look forward to seeing what else he has in store for us as we progress. So yes, my name is Turiho, Danita. I shall be your host this afternoon. It is my honor. So diving straight into the conversation, the current UPDF amendment bill has been brought before Parliament. It has come into place as a result of the Supreme Court's ruling earlier this year regarding civilians being tried before military courts. Basically, where in that particular decision, what happened was that civilians were the courts were directed to hand over all cases, civilian cases, from military courts to civilian courts, because they found that they did not have the legal capacity to hold such cases. And so I would just like one of our panelists, Nancy, to obviously give us a brief introduction about the history of this bill, why it is in place, and what exactly it is looking at.
Thank you so much. To begin with, I don't think this case is just about the amendment bill. It's about our history fighting the militarization of institutions in this country. It's also about the Supreme Court decision. And generally, while we are thinking about it, we, as legal scholars, we should think of it as the ghost of ex parte Matovu. Haunting us until today.
Yeah.
Yes. So, the Supreme Court in February brought in some orders.
Mm-hmm.
However, let us note that, as the Uganda Law Society says, as these orders were not mandatory orders, they were merely advisory orders for the courts to be restructured, for the military courts to be structured, for us to not have civilians be tried in military courts. And for me, I believe that is where we made the mistake, though it is still in contention when we think about it. Would the Supreme Court orders have been followed? Because right now we have cases that are supposed to be were supposed to be transferred to civilian courts with no real directive on how these cases were supposed to be transferred. They are still hanging in the balance. No one knows the fate of all those people who are still in jail. For example, Dr. Tumwesigye, 6 months in now, from the time he was arrested or abducted. Now, I believe that we need to first think about it, because I have said before on this show that according to Article 92, Parliament is not supposed to overhaul the decision of the Supreme Court by bringing in law that has already been decided by the Supreme Court, according to Article 92. But we also see that this
was merely advisory.
Yes, this was merely advisory. So there is room for them to actually do this. And knowing our country, we know that a few weeks back, legislators received 100 million shillings each. And we know this usually happens right before. And I said it on this show before that, this is what after Easter, we're going to have the UPDF amendment bill in. And indeed, that is what happened. But now, to go to the bill directly, we're going to talk about, you know, the Attorney General's arguments for the bill. They say it's meant to streamline composition of the Defense Forces and establish healthcare for its members as it should.
Yeah.
Yes. They also say it's restructuring the court-martial in accordance with Article 129 1D as a court of judicature in Uganda. But also providing for circumstances under which civilians can be tried under the court-martial. And I think that is where our debate is. Should this even be happening? And they say they want to do this to preserve military discipline and national discipline, seeking the broader interpretation of Section 119, and it says that some civilians by default, like Theresa said one time on the show, bring themselves under military jurisdiction by the things they do. Also, it says that the Supreme Court overstepped its boundaries by challenging the mandate of Parliament to make laws.
Ah, okay.
Yes. That was a thing that rubbed me the wrong way, especially because we understand that over time it's the executive that has been overstepping its powers, but also because there is a reason why we have a separation of powers, but this separation of power is only recognized when the decision or the desires of the executive is being challenged at a certain point. So now, in the UPDF amendment bill, we have the clause 30, the contentious clause 30, which provides for persons who can be tried under military law. Under this clause, it uses the Supreme Court language of
Exceptional
circumstances. But when I read the section, I felt like it widened the jurisdiction of persons who could be tried under military jurisdiction, because we have persons who accompany. Then, you know, just so that I can read it, I can read it very well. First, we say that exceptional circumstances were not defined. So I find that a little bit problematic, because what does that mean?
Wasn't that one of the things under contention even before the Supreme Court?
Ideally, yes. Ideally, it was, and it's being brought back. And now clause 30, perhaps it's an attempt to explain the exceptional circumstances. And they say anyone who accompanies any unit of the army in active service in any place. And later on in the act, I don't remember the exact clause, it says it could include members of a person's household. That means your spouse, your children, your shamba boy, anyone really. But also persons serving on engagement with the army is another condition, and which engagement is not clearly defined. And lawful possession of equipment or ammunition, ordinarily the monopoly of the UPDF, that's clause 32 under Schedule 7A and 7B. So that means firearms licensed under the Firearms Act. We know that there are persons who also own guns, civilians who own guns. They are allowed to. They seek permission to own guns. And then there are also chemicals there are some chemicals that are used in industrial complexes, research labs, and, you know, say salt of ammonia and nitric acid employed in nitrogen-rich fertilizer. And those are some of the circumstances, because we know that some of these chemicals are even found in schools, you know, in their
very publicly accessible.
Very publicly accessible. And I believe that with enough regulation, this should not be a problem. But also, one of the things that actually strikes me as very funny about this amendment bill is because most of the crimes that we seek to try under the military jurisdiction are already provided for by the Penal Code Act and other criminal legislations in this country. So I think this is a deliberate effort to militarize the country. And when I say this, it's not just because, you know, I am against the whole idea of persons being tried in military jurisdictions, but in military courts, but it's because we already know that by its composition itself, which was not clearly addressed for me, and on qualifications in order to have a fair trial in the military jurisdictions, I feel like it was not clearly addressed, and I think that it could be problematic, especially when it comes to hierarchy, because in a very funny section they say that if a person of a higher rank than the
judge advocate
is to be tried before the general court martial, and the CDF may, with the permission of the commander in chief, temporarily elevate the status, the rank of this person to the same rank as the accused person, to try them and then strip off the rank. Why? All of this seems like an overreach, and considering the CDF's position on the trial of civilians and his excesses as an individual in this country, I think we have to look at this critically, because he has publicly said that he doesn't need anybody's permission to met any kind of punishment against people, and I think this is a big trial against our justice system. It's the militarization of our justice system now outrightly being publicly acknowledged. Of course, it was already there. We've seen soldiers in courts, you know, and you could say they're there for the protection, but we've also seen their behavior when it does not go, when the court process does not go the same way that the executive branch of the government expects it to go. So for me, I think that is a problematic. The UPDF amendment bill is a problematic bill, because all other sectors of Uganda's institutions have already been militarized. Everything, power is centralized with the president, the commander in chief. There is suppression of institutional autocracy, that people have to seek permission to do any other thing from him. So it is disturbing, to say the least.
Okay. The bill also, no, one of the other contentious issues in the judgment was the matter of the qualification of the judge advocates.
Yes.
Was that something that was addressed in the bill, and how was it addressed?
I don't think that was adequately addressed, because as far as I know, the bill says that it should be a person with legal knowledge, right, to the level of a trained lawyer. Is that it, Theresa? Did you get that? Yes.
Was that not just for the highest ranked individual in the
It
panel?
was for the highest ranked individuals, but the rest of the judge advocates didn't have to have such qualification. But I know that they attempted to address that, but I mean, they attempted to address issues of power and, you know, issues of
hierarchy.
Qualifications and hierarchy, by saying that these persons will be appointed by the Judicial Service Commission. Yes.
So what criteria do you assume the Judicial Service Commission would be utilizing to appoint such individuals?
It's such an open concept that I don't even think it has been debated deeply, and I feel like it's in the handwriting of a person who wants to get this together so quickly, so that certain individuals can go through the court martial. Okay.
And another issue was in regards to the relationship between the civilian courts and the military courts, in regards to which rank exceeded whom, which rank exceeded. In the case that a civilian was brought before the courts, was there any issue of transitioning maybe from a military court or to a civilian court, or from a civilian court to a military court?
Yes, thank you so much. On that note, I know that the General Court Martial has the same powers as the High Court right now. So
Per the bill,
my bad, per the bill, it will mean that the General Court Martial and the High Court possess the same powers, which makes me wonder which one, because I think the reason why they're giving the General Court Martial the same kind of powers like the High Court is because most of the jurisdiction has been widened so much that if you think about it, in the long run, the High Court might become irrelevant. And yes, because if they're trying almost all criminal charges, because even persons who are abating persons who fall under the general court martial or the military court system can be tried in the court martial. So if the jurisdiction is so wide that anyone can be tried by the general court martial, then what is the role of the High Court? What does the High Court do? It's only civil cases? If persons who by their engagement to the army, say contractors, are also under military law, then what is the High Court actually adjudicating? What is happening? What is being litigated in the High Court? So I believe that with that in mind, every person could potentially fall under, and I say could potentially fall under the jurisdiction of the court martial system.
Oh, that is very interesting. Thank you, Nancy, for that very in-depth introduction. I feel very educated on the concept. Theresa, just to bring you into the discussion right now, where is constitutionalism in Uganda in the face of such a contentious bill? The Supreme Court has spoken, whilst some may say there were merely suggestions. There were suggestions to a level. The Supreme Court suggestions should not be taken lightly, even as they are suggestions. Some would argue that Article 129 of the Constitution has been dusted off and, buried and long done away with in the face of such a bill. What do you have to say about this?
I think that, thank you, first of all. She's always so educative. I'm about to ask for another book. I'm about to be those students. So thank you so much, Nancy. I was very much looking forward to this time, to the bill. The last time I was here, I said this is a test for everybody, 2025. This is a test. We started on a very fast note, on a very critical note, 31st January. The year began with a bang. There was no way to say this is not 2025.
Yeah.
And we're not feeling it. We continue to feel it. First reading of the bill was on 13th of May, 2025 in Parliament. So there's an atmosphere around it. I think if we go outside even the courts themselves, it's about power. It's always been about power.
Yeah.
Life will always be about power. It will always be about politics. And it's about the smartest mind in the room. So it's not about, oh my God, it's so bad that civilians are being tried in military courts. Okay.
What is it about?
Tell us something new. That's what I think. It's a very detailed bill. I'm not posturing here to say that I'm the one who has all the knowledge and I've read it from top to bottom. Challenge me. No, please do not, because this is something that we have to keep going to. We look at the history of Uganda. I love that you mentioned Experte Matovu. It's kind of a niche thing. If you're not a lawyer, what is Experte Matovu and who is Experte Matovu? This is an age-old question. When the Supreme Court justices, land justices, Supreme justices were giving their judgments, they were not getting answers out of air, and they were not only reading the Constitution of Uganda. They were looking at the history of democracy. They were looking at the history of even the idea of creating a constitution. Where does it all come from? And who holds the power? This is where we now ask ourselves all these big things we like to say: separation of powers. How do we balance the authority between the legislature, the military, the judiciary, us as the people? When they say that poems don't build countries, people get annoyed. When they say the country does not belong to lawyers, people get annoyed. But there is a reason why the Supreme Court ruling, yes, it is a judgment. They have laid down the law. It's a win for constitutionalism, but where does their power end? If we want to talk about balancing of powers, we must balance everywhere. We cannot only say that the executive is always stepping on everybody. Everyone else is powerless. We are so weak. Oh my God, the judiciary has no authority. I feel like we need to be more optimistic, and we need to Be more honest.
Mhm.
I think it's not that bad. The
not
fact that the judiciary, I mean, we were clapping here.
Yes, we
But
were
in
clapping
this very
here.
space.
Mhm.
And that's what I love about this show. That's what I love about sitting with you ladies, because we were here clapping.
Yeah, we
because
had high
we
hopes.
understand. We had high hopes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I feel that the bill is an attempt at fulfilling hopes of different individuals, different entities, different people, different minds. This is what I think. And we talk about hierarchy, we talk about chain of command. The UPDF Act has always been as clear as light and day. I'm going to say that, but of course everything can always get clearer. Even the constitution itself. Uganda is a young country. The countries that we admire, we talk about
The United States,
talk about
Great Britain.
the Greeks, you know, the Greek gods, the Olympics, the origin of the Olympics. It's not yesterday, it's not 50 years ago, it's not 90 years ago. It's hundreds of years ago. Things are old. We are existing within a time that is not isolated from history, and it's not isolated from the future. So I feel that everything that happens means something. Now, constitutionalism, I say we are still walking, we are limping, we are watching, and the question comes down to power. Where does the power belong? I said here in 2023 that power ultimately will belong to the people. Why someone would say that Parliament has the authority to put forward something like this is because they have the power according to the Constitution. Why the judiciary, why the Supreme Court, the Chief Justice can sit and read English and we say yes sir, and we believe, even when we don't understand so many things that he's saying. Like, leave alone being lawyers, right? We may understand, but it's because we have faith in their authority. And where do they derive this authority? From the Constitution. The Constitution comes from us. It's not something new. It's not something that we don't know. It's not written in, of course it's written in English, that's a problem, but these are our ideas as Ugandans. That's the authority that we give to Parliament. We tell them, this is my gift, this is my dream, these are my ideas. I'm trusting you with them. That's why they swear and they stand and they speak English and say, so help me God, and we clap for them and we say, okay, go and represent us. So the question comes back to where does the power belong? But I think that this is a test. It continues. Different entities are flexing, including ourselves as civilians, and lawyers will keep arguing things. She says, she raised a number of questions. She mentioned the judge advocate. According to my knowledge of the courts martial systems, the judge advocate advises the members of the court martial, and the judge advocate has the qualifications of a high court judge.
No, the judge advocates are the members of
the members of the court.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
they're the ones that
And
pass.
do you believe that the lawyers who practice in the courts martial have the brains, because they have practicing certificates?
But it's not necessarily lawyers that are the judge advocates. It's just, it's an appointment system like any other in the army.
Yeah.
So as long as you have maybe sufficient rank and you've met the criteria that the chief of defense forces or whoever the appointing authority is, you are appointed a judge advocate. Your legal criteria is irrelevant to the discussion. It's only in this bill that your legal education comes into play, and it's only for the highest ranking member of the panel, maybe. So, and
I would say that on good authority, there is no one who will hold the position of a judge advocate, or even previously, leave alone the amendment, who is not a lawyer, at least at basic minimum. Because the question that keeps coming up is whether the court martial is a court. And I think people are dancing around the issue now. I don't think it's that contentious. The court martial is a court. If you look at the definition clauses of the amendment bill itself, Section 1, it defines a military court and it mentions a unit court martial, division court martial, general court martial. So, and it mentions also courts martial, unit court martial, division court martial, and general court martial. It's very clear. These are courts, these are not tribunals, these are not disciplinary committees. Yes, disciplinary committees are there, but they are courts. You need a practicing certificate to appear before, to represent somebody.
Yeah, that is true. You
yeah.
do need a practicing certificate. We agree on that.
Yeah.
But those that here, and you say that you've not seen any individual before, any of the judge advocates that is not a lawyer, and yet we have seen them. I will not point out any specific names at the moment, but I can say on good authority, maybe I'll attach something in the comments, a list or something, just to make sure that we are all on the same boat. And it's a contentious issue. As someone, as I think the three of us have gone through some level of legal education, it's really disturbing to see someone without legal education coming to pass judgments. I often say that at home, when I give a legal opinion, it's like a conclave. 2/3 have to agree, regardless of whether or not there is legal education there. And a majority of the time, a good portion of the time, there is some ignorance that is being utilized. And to see that ignorance being extended to someone's life or death scenario, or someone's 30 years or 5 years in prison, or whatever judgment might be passed, it's scary, because I might have my ammonium nitrate at home. The next
because
thing you
you're
know,
a chemist and you like to DIY.
Exactly, and next thing you know, I'm being carted off. I mean, the bill also introduces clothing as another contentious issue. Things that are likened to clothing that could be worn by, colors that are worn by the military personnel, or clothing, even boots. I'm a boots girl. What happens to me now?
There are illustrations, though.
Oh, there are illustrations
of
the
the type of boots. Yes, there are
It's
illustrations.
clear.
Yes.
Well,
however, I think when I'm talking about this, it's the fact that as an ordinary civilian, to say, who has fair legal knowledge of what the army is supposed to and supposed to not do, I actually do not know what takes place in the army.
Have you ever attended a session in the General Court Martial?
I have.
You have?
Yes.
How many?
No, just that once with Dr. Kizabesige something.
You should check it out on a normal day.
So the point is, I do not know their rules. I do not know how they operate. I do not understand chain of command and respect it, because here outside, I'm a lawyer who went to law school, and I know freedom of speech and like you know whatever. And yet when you go down there, the rules are different. We're not playing by the same rules anymore. Exactly. And so you're throwing me out of this life into that docket that is very restrictive. For me, that is my biggest challenge. But also the fact that these people, the word of somebody can be law, where they come from. So that means that there's no such thing as accountability. And with the chain of command being followed, and we know who is at the helm of the chain of command, that is like our biggest problem with this, because it means that as long as you have a different political opinion, or as long as you find yourself on the wrong side of the road, to say, you're going to be a victim in this case.
Do you genuinely believe that?
Yes, I do. I genuinely believe that. And not just from speculation, but it's from watching many Ugandans.
Beyond the present Chizabesigye case, beyond this present case.
Oh, let me tell you. That's why we say history. Militarization did not begin here. I think things went to smoke with Amin coming into power, and we still cite him as the biggest dictator this country has had. And after Amin, the regimes were were off because everyone was overthrowing everyone. You know, we've had presidents for 3 months, 6 months.
But then it wasn't just Kizza Besigye, was
It-
it? We
it-
had Kawaziguruka. That's just
yes,
a good
yes.
example.
And, no, I'm coming to it. And then we had now the post-Amino Bote regime, which this current government cites as the most brutal government this country has seen because of what they did to people in this part of the country, especially central Uganda. And you know, in a book that I read in somebody's chronology, they talked about how these army men would come and shoot people in their homes and then write on the walls, shot by this person. And I don't think like
Wild.
like wild. But those are stories that many people believe, many people have cited over time because they were scared for their lives. They've lost relatives to these things. And it's not an isolated case. So with the coming of the NRA regime, because they went to the bush because of this bad behavior. They were like,
behavior.
yes, it's bad behavior. I know I sound like a school mom or something,
Yeah.
but
It's
this bad behavior.
Yeah.
It's this bad behavior because we know that you cannot just kill somebody, even if on the spot. Even capital punishments meted by courts are frowned upon. You know, from a moral point of view. So now, for us to come to this moment when we are saying, oh my God, why is this happening? Because why? It's not very different from the CDF, from someone disappearing, and then the CDF says, I have him in my basement, I've cut off his hair, he's learning Runyankole, and then the person can barely walk by the time he's reaching the court system. It is not very different from that, I'm telling you. And we can say, just because he didn't die, we can say, well, but he didn't die. But the point is, he stripped this person of their humanity and wrote his name, signed it with a picture of the person on his page, and then said, he's in my basement. How is that very different?
Well, it's a frightening thing.
It's a frightening thing because this man has children, he has a family, and now in the future his children will be saying, yes, during this regime, this is what happened. And they'll also be writing chronologies for other children, and they'll be like, oh my God, how could this happen? Yeah.
It's extremely disturbing.
It's extremely disturbing. But also, I think we need to understand the concept of rule of law and rule by law.
Huh.
Yes.
So where do you think we're standing right now?
I guess, you know, lack of accountability, selective application of the law. That is rule by law.
Yeah.
Get the law, apply it selectively to force people to conform to a certain type of thing. That is what I believe is where we are. Because in, you know, the rule of law we preach about, we talk about, you know, balancing stuff, separation of powers, freedoms, respect of human rights, but also application, everyone being equal under the law. So, and I don't think that the general court martial or the military court system in its current state, with its current chain of command, it's capable of giving us of ruling by the law. I mean, no, not ruling by the law, but it doesn't have to rule. It's only that it's confusing when the powers are centralized in one point. So I said that, but it's capable of administering fair judgment, respecting human rights, respecting civilian authority.
So you're saying that the General Court Martial still, even with the present bill does not solve that defect of
It does
fair
not.
hearing.
It does not. But also, aside from that, militarizing the entire country is very unnecessary. The powers of the military are clear. Protect our territorial borders, protect the citizens, respect human rights.
But some would argue that this is them
About
protecting the
duty.
citizens.
What about the duties? Leave alone the functions. What are the duties of the military? Because the military, a soldier is not supposed to be passing when someone has fallen down and just keep walking. They're not allowed to do that.
But
And the UPDF Act. Don't look at me.
I'm just listening.
Well,
The UPDF Act, I would like to address some of
Please,
the
go
issues
ahead.
that she's bringing up. Chain of command, I have made similar assertions here that Uganda is over-militarized. So now, if we go back to the present bill and we even look at the nature of the military, the institution of the forces, what are forces and what makes a military force a military force? It is about chain of command. It is about, that is why someone says Commander 1 and you're not going to say, no, me, I'm the one who is Commander 1. Who has made you Commander 1 is the question now that we shall ask you. If you call yourself a general, I can't stand up right now. Maybe I'm a coward. I cannot stand up right now and call myself a general because I want to sit and deliberate and people fear me. No. Yeah, what makes a country is because there is someone at the top, and then there is the leader and the led. There are rulers and the ruled. And I think that we tend to forget that a lot. Sometimes I'm a Christian, that everybody knows that.
So
I'm
wait.
Catholic. But I'm just trying to draw a parallel.
So in Uganda, who do you think the leaders are and who do you think the led are?
The constitution is very clear that there is a fountain of honor.
Yeah.
Who has the power that comes from who?
The people.
Us.
Some would argue that means we are the leaders.
Yes,
And
but within a structure.
yes, within a structure.
Even
and
the president, even the commander-in-chief cannot just come up. Yes, you can write on Twitter and say that on Heroes Day, this guy, that is the end.
Yeah.
And it will be televised. All of you must fear me. Didn't Heroes Day come and go? What is the date today?
Heroes Day has not yet
Isn't
come.
it June? Isn't
Sorry,
it
I
in
mean
June?
Labor Day.
Yeah,
I mean Labor Day. You
Come
can talk
on.
about Labor Day, or someone can stand up and say, I can stand up and call myself a commander and say that I'm going to take. I do not want this to be taken out of context. I can come up and say, I'm going to now come here in Tinder and take over this land because I have decided, and I'm a general. I have taken over these studios, they are now mine. No. There is a structure. You're a host, and there is a reason why I defer to you. There is a reason why we respect the Supreme Court. There is a reason why the Speaker can sit and call MPs to order who are fighting meanwhile as if we are at break time in primary school. Call them to order, and the one who wants to pretend to have collapsed after provoking a fight will pretend to have collapsed. The one who will take the warning will sit down. And the meeting will continue, whether you like it or not, whether you like what the other party is saying or not. That's why there is opposition. Why? Because not everybody will always agree with you.
So you make a very important assertion in regards to structures in the military. Commander 1 has
clear. It is clear.
All governance, and then the others are subordinate to him. So he says something, they agree. He says something, they, even though they do not fully agree, by virtue of the fact that they have laid themselves before this structure, they have given themselves to this structure, they must agree. So how do you think that would carry through to the judgments? So Commander 1 has this view like, but I think this guy is of a specific questionable nature. Maybe just put him in for 3 years, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years. Let him first rest. Let him first rest. How do you think that would carry to this particular structure that the UPDF wants to have fully set up?
I love that question very much because she mentioned that if a person on trial is of a higher rank than the judge advocate, then the CDF is going to temporarily promote the judge advocate in order for them to have the authority over this person. I think that in itself is a good thing, and the fact that it's codified is a good thing. If people say that the military is defective by its very nature through and through because the one who is of a higher rank than you is the one that gives you orders and you have no choice but to follow, that is a defect that has been identified. And how is it solved? We have seen previously generals, including General Kale Kaihura himself, was on trial in the General Court Martial. General Tomukunde himself has appeared on trial in the General Court Martial. So this is not something new.
Yes.
That's why I would like us to go beyond the present case.
Yeah.
I would love for us to have a deeper discussion of the history of Uganda. What is the exact role of the General Court Martial and what is the exact role of the security forces within the region? We look at Uganda not as an isolated case. We look at this bill not as an isolated matter. That's why, if you don't like what the speaker is saying about coffee, you are free to come up with a minority report. They are always having conferences, over ideation meetings, whatever. They are spending money. Of course, the fact that Parliament needs to shrink is not being contested here. But I'm going to say that if you don't like what they are saying, present something better. That's what I'm saying. And that's what the law is about. It's a duel. Let me take you on. If I take you on, if you decide to be Radical New Bar, you've become the Radical New Bar, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We've been advocating for the Judicial Service Commission. Why? The why of the Judicial Service Commission, I feel that needs to come up more in this conversation. When President Senior Counsel Semakade took over the reins of the Uganda Law Society, he came and said we are banging tables. Some people clapped, others did not clap, because as always, not everybody will agree with you, is what I'm saying. But the major push, the shift that I see with this Uganda Law Society, the lawyers have a big role to play. We are not going to pack our bags and go home because they've said that Uganda is not ruled by lawyers and judges. No, everybody has expertise in their field. Lawyers, this is our time to shine. They've talked about the Judicial Service Commission. It is us.
Okay.
It is also provided for in the Constitution. We have able lawyers who are contesting. We have Professor Mbazira, we have Senior Counsel Ellison Karuhanga. Off the top of my head, I will mention those. And these are wise people. And if we say that now the Judicial Service Commission has a role to play in appointing or in approving who sits on the General Court Martial bench, then it's a good thing. Now what is the question? What question remains? What defect remains? You have identified a defect in the court martial. The bill has said, okay, this is how we shall try to solve it. If they say we need the Judicial Service Commission, is it there? Another question. We're now knocking on another door. We have to keep knocking on doors. 2025. And if the Judicial Service Commission is not there, why is it not there? Why are elections not happening? What is the delay? What have the courts said, and why are we not moving? So we will keep crying about civilians. We shall keep crying about the military if we refuse to keep asking the questions, to keep looking at the details.
Okay,
Please,
one moment.
Yeah.
I have one follow-up in regards to the higher rank. You really placed emphasis on the fact that we have found a solution now to a problem. The problem at hand being the fact that rank, rank was a question that was highly deliberated upon. You are of a higher rank than me, I must be the judge advocate. And I think that, of course, was a question, but it wasn't a question that would particularly pertain to civilians in the military court. So, and right now, that would be basing on the assumption that the issue is the person being tried before the court, as opposed to other outdoor third parties with specific
this person
interests.
even be tried by the military court?
Exactly. And then also, the Constitution is clear. I have to have a trial without interference. When we talk about interference in regards to civilians, we don't talk about the fact that you might be of a different rank or something like that. We talk about the fact that the CDF or someone of a higher rank even could just decide, I don't like this person, and I control your future as a judge advocate. I control your ability to be promoted or to be retired early or whatever it might be, or even your salary. It's in my hands. Everything you are as a person, your career, your family, it is essentially in my hands. And so this hasn't been something that has been specifically addressed by this bill in question. The question of how do I ensure that how do we ensure that this is actually a free and fair system without interference, the interference that comes with structures. Of course, we can respect those structures when you're implementing them to your people who signed up for it. But me walking down the street, I did not sign up for your structure.
You're just being cute in your boots.
Exactly. Cute in my very questionable boots, but still
Yeah.
cute in my boots.
Yeah.
And so now I found myself before a system I don't understand and I do not subscribe to, and I never want to subscribe to.
Yeah, for sure.
So how do we make sure that civilians are actually, how do we make sure that they're actually protected? Do we care enough that they're actually protected? Is this bill indicative of the fact that we have taken into account the humanity, the dignity, or even just the citizenship? Because we're going to base our human rights on that.
Yeah.
Is it indicative of that?
Yeah, I love your questions. As always, we are going to have to balance security over stability and continuity of certain interests. I feel that this is a lot of English, but this is a law, and that's how laws are, and that is the reality that we operate in. So I have said here previously that if things are gazetted, things are gazetted. And the first thing that they drum into our heads, the first lesson in first year law school, ignorance is no defense. Me, I have to keep saying that, of course, we are all human beings. That's why I began by saying that I'm not here to posture as if I know everything. And another thing they tell us is that a good lawyer is not one who knows the law, but one who knows where to find the law.
Yes.
So the bill is before us. We should take a magnifying lens and study it. And there are certain things that people try to say, certain colors, certain dress, whether it be shoes, whether it be pips, whether it be things that signify ranks. We can't pretend. I think there's a lot of hypocrisy and there's a lot of double standards. People want to pretend as if it's such a difficult question to know that if someone is wearing fatigues and they have pips that read Brigadier General and they have a name tag and they have things hanging on their arm, the first thing that's going to come to your mind is that this is potentially a military person. So I think that there's a lot of dishonesty. We are just deceiving ourselves too much. We are looking at the nitty-gritties. We are saying, now, what about black shoes? Oh my God.
Okay.
I think that
let's leave the clothing aside. Let's leave the clothing aside because I think we've narrowed it down to a specific issue that you might make a good point is largely irrelevant, where we won't be so ignorant that we'll be wearing military boots or military fatigue. But it doesn't just extend to clothing, does it?
No, it does not. It extends to family. If you are related to someone in the forces
and just living in your house, maybe.
I came to your house to work. Me, I don't know, but me, I've come here to work, and you've called me to come here to work. Now I'm before the General Court Martial. Everyone is speaking English. I'm seeing everyone in uniform. What is my fate and what is going on in my life? Am I doomed? No, you are not doomed. I will say that let's try. Our leaders, MPs, may I keep calling upon you, please. You're there to represent us. Don't let us be confused. Don't let the electorate be confused. And for me, this has been always a pertinent issue. This goes beyond politics. These are real lives. These are people's real lives. People have young children. Maybe someone has a pregnant wife. It's not fair that you do whatever you do with people. You will get a microphone and abuse it. You will abuse your freedom of speech. You will incite people to be violent because you know people, the economy is tough. And you know that people are desperate, and you're going to use your platform to rile people up, and yet for you you're successful, for you are protected, your family lives abroad, your children are abroad. Someone has a pregnant wife at home. And do you think it's fair and proper in terms of morality and justice for a woman who is pregnant to hold a baby and a child and a photo to say that my person is missing, it's not good. It's dangerous and it's not fair, and I will like to call upon politicians, please, let's stop using people. Let's stop riling people up for our own interests when for you getting millions of dollars, and these are people's lives, you're using them for a photo opportunity. It's not fair, it's not right. These people have rights. We like to talk about human rights. These children are going to grow up on social media. They'll see photos of themselves as babies being carried, and for you, you're posturing with a microphone. I want to call upon us to stop that behavior as politicians. Thank you.
Can I
Thank
now
you,
go?
please.
I'm itching to go and say something, and not just to water down your arguments, but also to say something about the rhetorical technique that I feel like you've just utilized right now. You framed arguments in ways that reduce the critical thinking of a person to actually not. It's like ignoring their lived realities. What if that woman wanted to go and look for her husband with her baby on screen? It's because she's creating awareness as well. And I'm not denying the fact that politicians do that for a photo moment. It is true. It is true that they do it for a photo moment. However, every Ugandan now is aware that their husband can be picked up. And this is not inciting. This is true. It's a matter of fact. Also, where there is already existing law to try persons, where there is already enough jurisdiction to try people for certain crimes, why are we creating alternative means to try them? People need to think about it. That's why I said we need to be careful of rhetorical techniques. People explain things in such a way that diffuse your critical thinking, because there's already provision for treason. There's already provision for illegal possession of firearms, that where you can be tried in civilian courts for that. Why do we have to create this system? Why do we have to create these alternative courts in a restrictive environment that is controlled by a specific power, in order for us to have this type of thing going on? But also, when we talk about people saying whatever they want as a way of them just talking, we need to understand who says what. There are certain people who say certain things, and they have the power to carry out those threats. They do, and they demonstrate that they have the power to carry out those threats. So you cannot be naive. We cannot be naive and be like, oh, but he doesn't have the authority. The point is not the fact that he has the authority to do those things. It's the fact that, despite that fact, he, in actual fact, can carry out those threats. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well, but also, for me, when we talk about hierarchy, the ruled and like the rulers and then the ruled and all those things, it doesn't reflect to the idea of constitutionalism and freedoms that we're supposed to have. Because if all power belongs to the people, then when you say the ruler and the ruled, automatically in my head, I am going to look at my society and see who is ruled and who is the ruler, according to hierarchy, and look at the power distribution and be like, nah, it's not the people. 45 million people and a few people with the means to actually exercise power hold the power. That is my line of thought. But also, I need us to understand that we exist. The formation of society is that we do as little harm as possible to each other. Yes. That is the whole center of coexistence. And in order to further our arguments, we need to look at people's situations, where they come from. These did not begin today. The militarization of this country did not begin today. The unfairness did not begin today. The overreach and the framers of the Constitution were worried about the idea of the army, and they were like, they need to be regulated. They need to be regulated by Parliament on such and such. But we already also know that our institutions have been captured. For the longest time they've been captured.
Captured by the army,
by state power,
okay.
Which uses the army to execute its orders. You understand? And you see, for me, it's when I see this government, I feel like they cannot operate without the army, because everything they do, they need to put the army in it. Illegal fishing on Lake Victoria, let the army go and manage that. You get? Oh, furthering agriculture and farming. Oh, the army can help with that. Like,
do you think Uganda would survive without the army?
I think it would not.
In which
Absolutely
context?
not.
When
In
you
which,
say
and
survival?
when you say survive without the country,
Would Uganda stand if the army was not, for example, deployed to tackle illegal farming? If the army was not, for example...
I believe it would. I
we
believe
think we have the adequate forces.
we
to
have
do
the
that.
adequate forces, we have the police force, and it would. And for us, 40 years.
The police is also a security force.
Yes,
Yeah,
it is,
but
but
it's not the army.
But it's not the army. It's different. And I know that the lines have been blurred, especially with the way they train and with selecting army officers to head the police force. The lines have been blurred over time. But those are the problems that we're talking about. And also, 40 years or more into an administration that, okay, we've experienced several wars. That much is true. And they've handled that to the best of their ability. We cannot ignore that. That is something we have to applaud them for. However, 40 years into this rule, and the country is still a third world country. 40 years of peace, right?
But majority of Africa is a third world country.
Yes, majority of Africa is a third world country, and we say that
we
is
had really 40 years of peace. Because I understand the war in northern Uganda.
Yes. The war in northern Uganda, there's in western Uganda. However, when you look at our city, have we had wars in the city?
In Kampala. Kampala is another discussion.
We've had demonstrations of people who have been radicalized by the situations that they've been put into. And I feel like people, this is a situation where I'd be like, the government is mad at people for being mad at them. The government did not do its job, so people are mad at them for not doing their job. Now they're mad at people for being mad at them for not doing their job. What does that reflect about statecraft? In a statecraft, when you are the rulers or the players, the political players, you can be exchanged. You can get out of the pool. The only thing that remains, that stays, is the state. The state will continue to exist regardless of who you are. It must remain. And the state runs because of the nation, the people in it. So if there are no people, or if we go around killing everyone, and people say, oh, they can't kill us all. However, protests, these protests in this country, whenever people say there are protests in this country, the number of people who show up on the streets tell you that people know for sure that they can kill us all.
Yeah.
For me,
Is it because they know they can be killed, or because they fear Chiboko?
I mean, our history, if we're looking at history, it hasn't been friendly in this trip.
with protests.
So the life and death
weigh
scenario.
And ask if it is worth
And someone said, like, someone was comparing the protests of the Gen Z in Kenya, and these people were like going in the faces of the police officers.
Life is not a movie. Me, I've said it before and I'll say it again.
And Ugandans
Life
were
is
like,
not a movie.
And Ugandans were like, what's going on? What's going on? And let me tell you, it's not that I'm saying that the protests of the Gen Zs in Kenya did have its issues, because violence was... Yes, people died. Violence was uncalled for.
Was it worth it? Yes, the bill was revoked. The Income Tax Act was revoked. But the president fired cabinet and we clapped. But people are dead.
In the long run,
dead.
If you look at, for example, if you compare the people who die in their system and the people who die in this restricting system, can you say it's the same number? If we're comparing,
Forget numbers, outcomes.
Outcome.
You have to look at the outcome.
They got what they wanted.
The outcome economically.
Impact. What is the outcome
in
your pocket?
The outcome
house,
economically on people, the outcome on their well-being as human beings in terms of service delivery.
So the people who died, do their mothers say, yeah, this is what we fought for. A young man has died.
Sometimes
Yeah.
they do.
They do.
Sometimes they do.
If
It's
he had
it's
a pregnant girlfriend,
It's a terrible pill to swallow, but
It's a terrible pill to swallow.
when structures
I would
However,
not want to swallow
fall.
it. I would not want to raise
and
my sons in a world where they can go and take to the streets and potentially die.
Yeah, neither would I.
we
That's
neither
what they were
would die.
protesting.
That's what we don't
Ah.
want. That's why we need to.
Contact
That's why we need to put. We need to
Which
do
is
the
an
wrong, the
indicator
right
of a
thing, the right thing all over.
Anyway.
Because
It's true.
yeah.
Sorry, ladies, we have come to the very close of our show. It's been a lovely conversation. I think it has gone in so many directions, all of which I think are very pertinent discussions. So I will ask you right now to give your very brief emphasis on very brief. And I don't mean brief in the Ugandan sense, I mean brief in the literal sense. Closing remarks, starting with Theresa and then going on to Nancy.
This is a setup. What do you mean by brief remarks? Well, I would like to say that at the end of it all, whoever is leading Ugandans, whoever is leading us in our constituencies, even in our homes, you have to bring people together. Whoever is trying to take positions of power, you have to come and take the authority in order to unite people. This is not about divisions. This is not about I'm better than you or the other one is struggling and me, I have a lot of money. It's not about that. We have to bring people together. Our leaders in parliament, please, you come to us to beg for votes. Right now they are organizing sports things and pretending as if they care about people. No, you don't. No, you don't. If you genuinely care, this is your time to consult the people. They want to post and say, me, I took back the 100 million. Okay, now what? The bill is before us. We want the substance. We want the substance, and I say that at the end of the day, the call is coming from the house, and we all have a role to play in trying to inform ourselves and try to understand more one another. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Theresa. I appreciate the literal application of brief. Please go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you so much. I would like to make a call to people out there, because one of the things I struggle with is differentiating what is worse, lack of information or misinformation. And I want people to be aware, to take the steps to get the information that is right, and to avoid being misled by people who are serving their own interests. And I agree totally with Theresa when she says your members of parliament don't care about you. They don't care about you, and it is the truth. Unfortunately, our system is structured this way. So when you vote, you need to vote the right person. But you also need to be aware of the narratives that are out there and give literal definitions and circumstantial definitions to the things that are happening around you. Because when someone says that these people are better than these people, there is a word for that. Othering. When someone comes in and says that these people deserve to die, but we deserve to live, there is a word for that. That's genocide.
And we have to look at the person who is saying that statement, no matter who they are.
Yes.
And we must call it out on either side. No one is above
absolutely
critique.
Absolutely. But also we have to look at our politics critically. It's run by a cult of personalities. Personalities who think that they own this nation more than others. No, as long as you are a citizen, you own this nation as much as the next person. Therefore, there is no reason why somebody should be worshipping another person, and you should not be listening to somebody who is worshipping another person. That's a thing. But also, let's stop using other groups as scapegoats.
Yeah.
Scapegoats. Using a disadvantaged mother to parade her before the media. Using people who are poor to further your agenda by giving them small amounts of money.
And you're writing reports in English. And
yes, about that.
Yeah.
But to end it, let us also understand situations the way they happen. The media today, social media, say for example, and all types of media, most times reports things in due time. Let us be aware that there are alternative narratives that will be coming and following, and disregard it with the disgust that it deserves.
Thank you so much, Nancy, Theresa. It has been a lovely show, a lovely afternoon as usual. I love the spirited discussions and different angles you both bring to these conversations. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the close of yet another Tuesday afternoon. It has been my distinct honor to host you. The question of the UPDF amendment bill is not one that is isolated to certain members of the public or certain members of the military. It is one that affects each and every one of us as citizens. Someone says when there is injustice anywhere, there is injustice anywhere. Not to say this is an injustice per se, but some would question the situation at hand. So that's what I'm trying to encourage. Let us question, let us critique, let us inform ourselves in regards to this bill and any other that stands before Parliament. In the end, it is our lives, our day-to-day existence that is being discussed on those floors. It has been a lovely discussion. It has been an honor to have you with us. My name is Turiho, Danita, and have a great afternoon. Thank you.